You're listening to Level Up with Wondr, a podcast where we take listeners on a journey through the exciting world of gaming, tech, and innovation. Join the Wondr Nation team as we talk with a diverse group of pros who have taken their skills to the next level.
Hello and welcome to Level Up with Wondr. I'm your host, Jordan Bloom, and here we are with Vik Shrestha. Vik has a decade of experience in gaming and the tech industry, really specializing in commercial strategy, player development, and product innovation. He's also the co-founder of a development company and recently an advisor on the board of directors at DrewStar. So Vik, how did you really get started in gaming and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I originally started in gaming at GLI, Gaming Labs International, on the compliance side. And it was incredible because I came from a completely different industry. So I had to spend a lot of time learning about the basics of the gaming industry. I got to work with some of the biggest suppliers out there as my accounts, including Aristocrat, Aruze, Sega, VGT, and many others. But at that time as well, I started working with some of the sports betting suppliers. And it was just Nevada at the time, but it gave me a great fundamental knowledge of the gaming industry. And from there, I was recruited to go be Sega Sammy Creations' first US based employee. And I had an amazing time traveling the world and spent a lot of time in Japan, Macau, and other jurisdictions building out an organization. It was my first time in really a people management role. So I had to start thinking about ways to do things differently. From there, I saw PASPA was going to be repealed pretty soon and spent some time on the supplier side. Then I went to the operator side with William Hill. This was when it was Nevada and it was just going crazy and the market was expanding rapidly and you're trying to do deals all over the place before legislation. William Hill was just one incredible opportunity to be on the operator side and understand their mindset. From there, I was recruited to go join IGT and build out their B2B play sports betting business. And that was awesome. From there, I had an opportunity to be an entrepreneur and co-found SB22. I was able to kind of shift strategies and think about what I want to do next and really tackle the iGaming industry. So yeah, that's kind of my journey.
No, that's an incredible progression to really always see the writing on the wall in your career and kind of predict what you want to do next. But did you always have a passion for sports betting and online gaming, or did that really progress throughout your career? What really sparked your interest and really got you to, like you said, working with Aristocrat, working with some of those larger companies? What really hey, I want to do this for the long run?
So what sparked it for me, my brother actually worked for GLI for a very long time. So I was always familiar with gaming in general and with the mindset though of, let's say, the compliance perspective, right? And the rules perspective. So when you have, let's say, strict guidelines in terms of how you can innovate, that's what really attracted me to gaming because the innovation is between that, let's say, 5% of the regulation and what you can do. You're trying to solve for a problem. That's what really attracted me and grew my interest over time in the gaming industry and seeing how the industry has shifted, how it evolves, yet still you have to stay compliant and work within the regulations. That was the most attractive thing to me as I grew my career. And then just applying that mindset of compliance first and innovate between the lines.
That's awesome. So you see compliance as one of the biggest challenges that most of us face as we're trying to build our companies and trying to, again, walk across those lines and make things that are innovative, but still fine within those rules. How do you, again, work within those confines and overcome those obstacles throughout your career and, again, work yourself into the position where you are of, again, having that compliance background and knowing how to create those games that work for people and can move the market?
Yeah, so the first thing, especially in the management side, is you bring in the right people who understand compliance from a technical perspective, and then you trust them and let them give you the feedback. And if you can't find the person, utilize the companies that are out there who can give you that feedback. Something I learned early on is that the sooner you involve the test lab to review a product, right, give their feedback, go through the checklist from a compliance perspective, the greater odds you have at going through the compliance testing process and getting your product approved and ready for the market. That's just a crucial step. Bring in the experts early on before you even build something. So that's crucial.
No, and I fully agree. It's about really setting up that infrastructure and making sure that you have good people around you to really build yourself up. And that's awesome to hear from the management perspective because a lot of people are like, hey, I run a team well and it's me and I lead from the top sort of thing. But it's good to attribute your success to others and really have that sort of mindset. Hey, this is what got me to where I am today and what's going to catch me going forward. That's very progressive.
Absolutely. And it was when I joined Sega, and my boss at the time was like, "You're an awesome individual contributor. Yeah, like one of the best I've worked with. But your results are based on the team's results, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, spend more time training the team, spend more time having the team bring out the best in the team." That changed my entire mindset early on in my career because I was in management in my late 20s. And then just to build on top of that is you have to bring out the best. You have to rely on your team, and where there's gaps, you try to help plug it in. That's ultimately the way you become successful. And so I've
Mhm.
had that mindset for quite some time now.
That's awesome. So let's kind of take that and move that into what got you to that entrepreneurial side of your career to where you really wanted to take that management and team leadership, but also, like you said, that individual contributor success and really build a company. So you are a co-founder of FB22. What prompted starting that business endeavor and how did it really come to be?
I love the idea of always trying to create something that the customer wants, right? So when you understand the customer's challenges and you ask the customer, what are you facing? Even if you know the answer, right? If it's customer driven feedback and you start building a product that fills the gaps for what they need, that's what prompted me is that there are a lot of challenges from a sports betting perspective, from a technology perspective. And there was no easy way to really solve for those problems with the legacy tech stacks. And that's what prompted SP22 to say, let's build some innovation, let's bring some of these ideas, and let's actually do something about it. It was very exciting to be a part of that and to be a part of the planning process and the process of getting something to market, getting something certified. And of course, great team that actually did the building and actually did the certification. So I have to attribute everything to the people who actually did the work.
No, but that's incredible. It is the overall teamwork, but what was the overall vision when you first got in there to when you left it? Was it what you expected along that product journey? And what's it like to be a founder of a large company like that in iGaming? What's the entire process going kind of, not the full step by step, but tell us a little bit about the journey and how it you originally envisioned to where to what it eventually became.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, from a vision perspective, it was very simple, right? Build a sports betting platform that the market needs and that is modern and ready to scale. Now, along the way, in any startup's journey, the vision might change a little bit, and you start kind of looking at, hey, what's the latest and greatest? How do we improve things, which you didn't even set out to do initially? The journey changes. For example, the journey started shifting to, okay, all these sports betting operators and online operators are just really becoming like media companies, right? They're buying up at a ton of advertising space. They're
Oh yeah.
buying up channels. They're building out entire businesses around media. And so that's where we started thinking about, okay, why don't we create something from a virtual reality perspective or an artificial reality perspective? And so we did, right? And it was
Yeah.
more about highlighting innovation for the future rather than, hey, this is ready right now. It's about trying to show where technology can take the industry into the future. And that all was part of the initial vision, and it just kept evolving from there.
So, what was what you view the largest step in innovation in technology while you were there? Do you think it was VR? Do you think there was something specific that you saw during your time that really took the next step at FB22 and that you and your team were making an impact on to really bring it to that next generation?
Yeah, I think it was back to the fundamentals of the foundation because it was built with the latest technology. Certain things such as scaling and getting set up in a jurisdiction at a fraction of the cost. It always went back to the fundamentals of why we got into it. Those to me were the biggest, let's say, breakthroughs in terms of how the technology worked, more so than any of the other kind of nice to have verticals and let's say
Mm,
more innovative things from an exterior perspective is about the internals of the system itself that were more, let's say, breakthrough in my opinion.
that's awesome. And I think, again, that plays out to the startup kind of mentality of when you're really trying to break through, and it's not as easy as when you walk through with a larger company and you're like, hey, I work with this person and I want to have this conversation. You're really breaking that ground for yourself. So that actually leads me to my next question. And what was the transition like from a large company like IGT to sort of your own startup on the day to day and your overall sort of work schedule and your cadence? How did that really affect you? And what was that transition like for you overall?
Yeah, so I was pretty fortunate that when after I left GLI, I was working almost like an entrepreneur. So Sega, IGT, a lot of these were, not they're large corporates, right? And it's kind of these startup exciting divisions. So a lot of times you're creating processes or maybe breaking processes you didn't even know are there, right? And you're doing things and working at a fast pace. And so I was very lucky to be like an entrepreneur for
That's
multiple
cool.
companies, taking that mentality to say, hey, let's try creating something and enriching myself in the process. Why not? Right. Let's see if we can do it. And so in terms of the cadence, you're just wearing a lot more hats. For me personally, I never believed in the power of marketing when it came to B2B technology in the past. And then I totally did a 180. I was like, oh man, this is marketing is the greatest thing in the world.
That's what we're all
Yeah.
doing here now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what was the biggest change in my mentality as well, is that the power of marketing, the power of building an ecosystem of other startups in the gaming industry, and kind of taking that mentality of how do you help startup XYZ by also helping your own startup through marketing, right? And that's what I think
Yep.
we did a great job at SB22. It was the marketing side.
No, fully agreed. And that company is still thriving and really making impact and making waves. But it's cool to see how you really progressed your individual skill set in your career, and it made you desirable to other people to want to give advice. And that's actually the different step you took in your career was when you went to DrewStar, which you are an advisor for. Why did you join DrewStar, and how is it different being an advisor instead of just being, like you said, a co-founder and being on the day-to-day giving advice instead of making the calls on what's going to impact the company?
When I initially left IGT, while SB22 was very early in terms of planning process, I was consulting for a few different companies and I loved it in terms of you're kind of there to give your opinion and there to help them make a decision
Hmm.
and drive things forward. So I grew a love of the advisory side at that time. And it was probably some of the best times in my life, right? You're a well-paid advisor and you're paid for your opinion and opening your mouth, and there's nothing better than that. And so with DrewStar, I developed a really good relationship with DrewStar's founder, the former CTO of Aristocrat, as well as president of tech at PointsBet. I initially started working with him through PointsBet, but he doesn't necessarily remember. But I met him in my early days at gaming at GLI, and he actually made a positive impact on me in the
That's
30
cool.
seconds that we met back in the day. For cybersecurity in general, it's just a growing field. So many issues and so many challenges that it really is an area that is going to grow, and it needs to be addressed and needs to be continually better because we're going to face more problems. But from an advisory perspective, it's about allowing the company to pick your brain and giving your
Hmm.
feedback, and I love it.
So, what do you see as really the next step for Juicestar, and why is this type of company important for iGaming and the sports betting industry in general? And like you said, this compliance and oversight and these things that need to be addressed. So, what is Juicestar really doing to circumvent that and make an impact in the industry?
When it comes to cybersecurity, you only hear about it when there's a hack, right? Or when there's unplanned downtime, and it's so reactive, right? So
Hmm.
what I really like about DrewStar is their ability to create proactive technology, so like continuous monitoring to ensure you don't get to that point of where you have to pay a massive ransom, right? Otherwise, everybody's locked out of the system. To me, that while that's a very simple way to explain it, using the latest in AI tools to really create that continuous monitoring environment and having a team of experts kind of guide an operator along the way so they don't reach the problem situation. To me, that's critical in any industry out
Agreed.
there.
Agreed. So, how do you see that, again, that stream going forward to make people's information more secure and that they feel secure with the companies that they're betting with?
I think it goes to the whole thing about continuous monitoring to ensure that nobody ever gets access to that information, even if it's encrypted or there's ways to decode things. And so
Hmm.
just to make sure that the problem doesn't happen before it's a situation, right? Because then what happens, it leads to lawsuits and all sorts of crazy things. To me, that's the most important thing, being proactive rather than reactive.
Agreed. And it's getting that oversight with a company and, like you said, making sure that people's information is safe and that they're doing and taking that next step to lock off that access and make sure that it's only being used for the things that it should be intended for.
Exactly. And the hardest thing is that you'll have typically your IT groups or your cybersecurity groups say, we need this or it's going to be a problem. And then upper management, typically they budget out, right? That, hey, we're going to spend X amount and Y amount on this and that, and until it's a problem. And so it's better just to spend the money and make sure it's not a problem. Otherwise, it's going to always be way more expensive.
Agreed. I don't think you're ever going to go wrong with taking that next step to level up your safety and make sure that you're, again, as compliant as possible. I don't think you hear many complaints about people being too compliant. So
Yeah, it's just
it's a
like
good place to be.
yeah, it's just like insurance, right? You always complain about paying for insurance until you need it. And then you're like,
Correct.
oh man, thank God I had insurance.
A lot of money moving in this industry, so it's good for people to feel safe and secure. But
Ah,
we got to talking a little bit in our pre-interview about your new endeavor. We didn't discuss it too much, so I'm excited to hearing a little more about it. Can you share some of the details and what it's about and what you're looking to accomplish?
we did close a seed round pretty recently, so super excited
Congratulations.
about that. Thank you. Yeah, it's very difficult in this economy. We got a great team. It's a mix of talent out of the video gaming industry as well
Hmm.
as casino gaming. And so half of the team is Japan, half of the team is in the US. And it's really about building iGaming content, so
That's
games
cool.
that bring AAA video gaming look and feel, and applying a very simple compliance mindset of, we know these games can get approved, and we know that these are going to look really good and be something that's marketable rather than just being a very similar game to everything else that's out there. These games are going to be developed as operator exclusives, and we're super excited to formally announce it, formally announce the team, as well as formally announce the first game, which is all coming very, very soon.
That's incredible, and I'm excited to hear more about it. What type of impact are you trying to make on the gaming industry with this type of company?
One of the biggest challenges that we're seeing the operators face is they build out a large database of sports betting customers, right? And
Hmm.
oftentimes it's so challenging to get that customer to switch over to the casino side. So what we wanted to do is build games that do bring in that AAA video gaming feel that maybe will attract some of those sports betting customers to say, that game looks cool. Let me click on it. Let me go try it out. And I'm saying this with a smile on my face because I think about problem gambling and not creating a problem. But yeah, that's the idea, is to try to create some games that appeal to that crossover crowd. I'm not a huge fan of your standard slots. I want to see something
Agreed.
different. That's where we wanted to try to hit the market with some premium, cool looking games that might do the trick. We'll see.
No, that's awesome. And it kind of speaks to what we like to talk to here at Level Up with Wondr. We like to talk about innovation in gaming and what new technology and what do you feel is next? So, what do you think if you had to say there's one thing like, hey, I think this is next in gaming and going to make it a significant impact on gaming or sports betting? And like, if you, again, just it could be a large product, it could be one segmented thing, but what do you think is going to make the largest impact in the next year or so?
I think what's going to make the largest impact is really how AI tools are going to be used. So, for example, at our new venture, because of their experience in using AI tools for generating content, arts, graphics, to actually generating the code to build the game, that's going to create a fundamental shift in terms of the supplier side of the industry. You're going to see a lot more innovative games being pumped out on a regular basis, whereas in
Hmm.
the old way of doing things, it's so expensive, or it was so expensive to create a game or take a risk on an innovative game, that the suppliers are like, well, let's just do more of the same, right? We know these are working. Why risk it? Why should somebody risk a bonus for that? And so that's where I think we're going to see a fundamental change, is how AI is going to change that. So content's
Hmm.
going to be different. the way promotions are created and hit the player are going to be very different, which ultimately impacts the way customers are retained as well, where you have a 24/7 way to shoot promotions and retention offers that are customized for that player. I think everything's going to change from that point, and we're going to see the large players as well as the small players in the space start, let's say, evening out a little bit, and
Hmm.
that's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah, a lot of that is that marketing impact, and like you said, targeting the right people with the right offers and making sure that they're playing the right offerings for them. So, taking all that into consideration in AI and how it's making an impact, how do you think this integrates with new technologies like VR or augmented reality? And do you think that's the next step to really bringing people in and resonating with users, the all encompassing experience? Like, hey, we're going to want to market through these VR headsets and make sure that this is going to be hitting them as much as possible.
I do think for a certain segment of the player base, that is going to become a bigger and bigger thing. For me personally, I think as of right now, it's going to take maybe 3 to 5 years to get to that point where you have a base of players who actually want to experience live dealer sports
Hmm.
betting, watching games and betting at the same time via VR and mixed reality as well. And so to me, I think live dealer is probably the area that has the most opportunity because from a
For
live
sure.
dealer perspective, we're already seeing like celebrity endorsements, right? I think Gronkowski did something also,
Yeah,
right?
so I saw that recently. He was talking to the people in the crowd. It was very cool.
And it's amazing when you are a fan of the team or the player. I mean, it's going to attract you, right? When
Hmm.
you're targeting that demographic. And I think that's where VR is really going to be impactful to our industry. And it's really about creating that niche market and then growing that niche market with content. And that's why we always go back to content is king, and that's how to actually make that happen.
Agreed. And like you said, you see a lot of people in the industry gravitating towards that content, making a bunch of celebrity endorsements and having those sort of deals to where, hey, I know that person and I'm going to go at least try out that game to have that experience and really make that impact on that customer. So I think one of the last things we like to do here before we sign off at Level Up is reflect on your career path and talk a little bit about other people that may have inspired you and got you to where you want to be and other advice that you might have for other people to get to where you are. So who are some people along the way that have inspired you or taught you the most valuable lesson throughout your career to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, I've had a really great 10-year kind of ride through this industry, or a little over 10 years now. I've got to meet a ton of people all over the world, and I've always taken the approach that it's better to not be the expert in everything. When I was at Sega and I'm asked to sell ETGs, I never did it, and I didn't want to take the approach to the customer of like, I'm the expert, right? And this is why you
Mm-hmm.
should buy. It was instead, hey, what don't you like about the current ETGs, and ask them the questions, get them excited about sharing their input, but then you take that input and make it part of your game, right? And I do that
Mm-hmm.
everywhere I go. So even at IGT, for example, there's salespeople there that 20 plus years of experience, and you wonder like, how are they so good at their job? Something I personally learned from, so I'll give a quick shout out to this guy named Tim Shortall, is just this mentality of like, you don't have to be the smartest or the best, right? But you just put in the effort, you put in the
Mm-hmm.
hours, the hustle, and the effort, and things happen. To me personally, I've always been part of like the entrepreneur side. So it's about quick results, right? And focusing on that. And then from there, just applying the hustle, the effort, but also realizing that everything in our industry is about long-term relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you never take the
Definitely.
shortcut of like, I'm just going to say whatever the customer wants to close a deal. It might look good for a quarter, but 1 year later, that guy's going to say this person, messed me up on my numbers. And you
Yep.
never want to be in that situation. And so I always take that approach. It's all about a long-term relationship, even if it means sometimes having the difficult conversation early on. You're going to be respected more for it for the long term. And so always do what's best for the company as well as the customer, and ultimately you'll build your relationship and grow in the industry.
No, agreed fully. And I think it's about massaging those relationships as much as possible and really creating that environment that feels comfortable for everybody. And like you said, you can learn something from anybody on any day. But on your personal achievements and personal things that you may have taught to others, what are you most proud of what you've accomplished thus far in your career?
I'm most proud of shifting the mentality from just being an individual contributor to being somebody that can be relied on for the team, somebody that helps a team get better.
Mm.
Typically, it's challenging, right? There's very different mindsets when it comes to that, and so to me, I'm most proud of the people that I've been able to work with in terms of seeing how they've progressed their careers. Oftentimes, I'll, let's say, be walking around G2E and somebody that I might have worked with at Sega or some other company comes up to me. To me, the biggest pat on the back or biggest sense of accomplishment is when they say, "Oh, it was amazing working with you," or "Thank you,"
Yep,
whatever it is, right? Even if they never reported to me.
of
And to
course.
me, that's my biggest takeaway is that I was able to positively impact somebody in their career.
Especially in this industry, when you go to those sort of conferences, we had this discussion previously. When you see people who can have those sort of conversations where you're like, oh, I just was just doing my job, and they're like, oh, you actually made an impact on my life. That's definitely a positive conversation and really want to keep you going in this industry.
Absolutely, and that's what I like most about being in, let's say, a management type role, because if you can just separate yourself from the day-to-day grind of a job and kind of take a higher level view of it's not about the short term always, it's about the long term, even with the people who work on your team, and how do you impact them for the long term. So even if they move on to another company, they're going to be a rock star there, right?
Yep.
I'm super excited when I see somebody that used to be on my team just dominate, and even if they
Yeah.
say like, yeah, Vic was the worst, I still know they're going to say thank you to me at the end of the day.
Yeah, because it's that stepping stone that you really set up and got them to where they are today. Everything has that sort of butterfly effect in this industry that you never know what's going to come out of it. Like you said, you put in that hard work every day and you're respectful to others, and you can really advance in your career. So, this is sort of a two-pronged question, but what advice would you give to somebody just getting started in sports betting and gaming industry? One from, like you said, that individual contributor perspective, but also we want to hear for people who have that entrepreneurial side. What advice would you give to them on getting into iGaming?
Yeah, so for the person starting out, I think the most important thing to do is to be able to listen and to be able to ask good questions. I think it was James Maida, the CEO of GLI, who said when I was at GLI, he said it to a room. He was like, I never ask a question I don't already know the answer to, right? It's like almost taking that mindset of be informed, right? So read,
Mm-hmm.
do the research, and then when you're in that discussion, ask the question. Even if you feel like you know the answer, maybe what you thought was the answer, you'll get something added onto that. But ask good questions and listen and genuinely take in criticism and take in feedback if it's for a product or whatever it is. Never get defensive and take it in and make your game better, right? When I started early on in my career, if I heard like, oh, you didn't do something, I just instantly you're defensive and you're not listening and you
Yeah.
never take in the feedback. It's doing the exact opposite, always taking the feedback for better or worse. For the second part of that, from an entrepreneur perspective, gaming in general is set up not for entrepreneurs, right? You have
Yeah.
compliance, you have licensing. It's a very difficult industry to be an entrepreneur in. However, if you go back to the start of the conversation, if you understand the foundation of gaming, the foundation of compliance, and plug in the holes that you have in your own game or your product or company with people that do know what they're talking about, that's when you can start building a company around a product or a vision. It's very challenging and there's a million reasons to not do something, but
Mm-hmm.
it's great when you can take the risk, and even if you fail, take knowledge out of that and try again. To me, that applies to pretty much any industry. But yeah, being an entrepreneur in gaming is difficult, but there's always opportunity, especially if you know there's a good product market fit.
No, and like you spoke to earlier, there's always that, especially in gaming, what's going to happen next quarter insight, and you really want to, again, position yourself for the next 3, 5, 10 years and have that sort of foresight and how you can build out that company. But it is tough in an industry that's moving so quickly and always rapidly evolving. But there is always room for innovation in tech, and it's cool to see the people that come up with the ideas and want to make an impact. So we really appreciate what you're doing, Vic, and what you're trying to show to other people in the industry and make those type of innovations. But when it's all said and done, and when you look back on your career, what legacy would you like to leave? If you're like, hey, I'm hanging it up, and this is what I hope everybody remembers about me.
For me, whenever I go into a new company or a new venture, I always have like a personal, let's say, bucket list, right? Before I know I've done everything I said I'll do. And I
Hmm.
keep it to myself and I kind of check things off. For me in gaming, when that bucket list is finished, is probably going to be when I know that I've built enough of, let's say, a coaching tree. It's almost like, let's say, Bill Belichick or Parcell or
Yeah.
somebody like that, but I've built enough of a coaching tree that a ton of people who I've worked with, who will,
Hmm.
who've had positive interactions with me, they've spread kind of all over the industry and they're making things go forward. I love to think back about GLI and like James Maida and all these guys. A lot of people, they leave GLI and they go on to do great things in gaming, and taking that mindset of like, yeah, they might have left my group or my company, whatever it is, but they're over there at XYZ company and they're doing great, or they founded another company. So for me, my kind of final bucket list is to have a big enough of a coaching tree that's impacting the industry. So when I'm long gone, there's still people talking about like, yeah, I worked with Vik. He was a good guy.
No, and honestly, that resonates so much with me personally and what I want to do with my career. So I appreciate this conversation, Vic, more than you could imagine. And it was cool to hear about the ups and downs of going through the industry, especially in that specific tech space where you're trying to be on the cutting edge and be ahead of everybody else. So again, giving up that insight to your life and giving up that advice to really push forward, we really appreciate that. And thank you for your time today, Vic. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and say hello to the rest of the Wondr team for me.
Thank you for listening to Level Up with Wondr. Visit wondrnation.com/level up for more podcast episodes about how we're reimagining the gaming entertainment industry. Want to level up your business? Visit our contact page at wondrnation.com to inquire about our strategic consulting or management services.